So let me restart. So what we're going to do is, as you know, that we have a unit which is this 3.25 academic and research skills. Now here, what we are looking at doing primarily is, once we have covered learning outcome 1 and 2, there are some documents which get produced as an output. Now those documents are primarily going to be 3. One is a skills audit that you've done. The second would be a SWOT analysis. And the third is going to be something which is going to be leading, these 2 documents leading into something called a personal development plan. Now, learning outcome 1 entirely focus on creating that document. Okay. And then what we have to do at some stages, when we go down and study a bit more deeper into the unit, learning outcome 5 basically, learning outcome 6 basically looks at a review. So which is called a reflective review. That means if you do something right now, you are doing it for the first time, you don't know what the outcome is going to be or how is it going to pan out. But when you go back and you've done something before and then you go back and do it again, because you've had the experience of doing it before, sometimes what you're able to do is do these activities or tasks in a much better, in a better fashion, or in a better manner to accomplish something which has been set as a goal. And because you do this again and you're able to reflect on your prior experience, this is called reflective review, or it is called something which you can say that you do it with a bit of hindsight because you have the information, knowledge and experience. And when you do that and you do it again with those gap areas in mind to correct it, is basically called a reflective review. So your learning outcome 6 will essentially focus on something that you have created in learning outcome 1, and that allows you to reflect on your progress that you've made during the course of this study. Now that could be something that we generalize for this particular unit, but you could also look at in a broader picture, look at reflecting on how you have made progress during the study or during the duration of the study of this course. Is that okay?
Right, yeah.
So what I would have, to give you an idea what I actually mean, what we need to do is that your first versions of your skills audit, your first version of your SWOT analysis, and the first version of your first draft or version of your personal development plan is going to be reviewed after 6 to 8 weeks. And that would mean that you would have not remained stationary at a particular task, but have moved by picking up a skill or an area of improvement, and that needs to be reflected in the second version of the document or the second draft. Okay, and here the idea would be to look at talking about the skills that you've been able to pick up because of the qualification, how some of the things that you've learned in the say business unit, in the communication unit has actually helped you to, or the marketing unit has helped you to kind of build your knowledge base, and then this is leading to some sort of improvement maybe in some of the key areas which could be personal and professional skills. And similarly on the academic side, because you're doing a bit of writing, which is assessment in terms of assignments, and we are assessing it, that academic writing style is showing a bit of improvement as you go along in terms of referencing becoming better, your sentence construction, grammar becoming better, your first grade maybe just being a pass, but successively now you're achieving merit, and that is showing improvement on the academic side. Okay,
right.
So that version of the document, we will basically look at doing it again. But in this case, it will show a bit of a journey that, okay, you have not remained stationary. You moved from point A to B, or you had those skills, but you've added 2 or 3 more skills over a point in time. You were, area-wise, some of the weaknesses have now become either strengths or some of the weaknesses have now been, addressed. And that is something which will be reflected in learning outcome 6 when we talk about your own progress and its evaluation over a point in time during the course and the study. Okay.
Right, that makes sense.
And in terms of the merit task, what we're going to do is once you send that over, so you will get some sort of an academic feedback, one from the tutor like myself. But apart from that, what you could do is when you show this as a, say, the data which has been gathered, like on the SWOT and on the skills audit, you can show it to somebody who's your friend and see if they comment on, in some sort of a table, which you can give to them saying, okay, can you, just not say that I'm good on IT skills or negotiation, I'm very passionate, or, I'm very diligent, but, kind of highlight by one or two comments next to that, skill that you're highlighting, that why do you think I'm good on that skill? And that will be something called a peer review. That means your friends who are at the same level, maybe studying in the same class or similar course, are doing a bit of a review to give you some feedback on it, and that is called peer review. Okay?
Right.
So that bit which you start to draw as a draft in this particular assignment is important, is because that learning outcome 1, whatever you create on this side, is going to be directly related to your learning outcome 6 that you basically review towards the end of this unit. Okay. Now, in learning outcome 2 that we have studied, what we've done is we have looked at the various tools and techniques through which we can actually do research. Why do we research? Reasons to doing research. How do we carry out research, whether it's primary, secondary, or tertiary research. And then we looked at outlining some of the key areas of how you do secondary research, right? How do you collect data for secondary research from various sources?
Right, yeah.
So in that presentation and the handouts which I've sent to you, that presentation and handout that I've sent to you, let me just quickly open that up. The idea here is at level 3, which you are doing, research, as I mentioned to you, is going to be a bit of a consistent theme when you study, higher levels, or you study, say, as you go along in level 4, or your undergraduate or your postgraduate, you will still be required to do a bit of research. And when you look at that particular side of research, what will happen in that case is that you will be required to differentiate, the various types of research methods can be employed to collect data, to do investigation, to look at solving a problem or identifying an issue. And that is where you get into these areas of why you want to do research. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, reason why the focus is on secondary research at level 3 is because at this level you are supposed to start building your knowledge on the what you call desk-based research or secondary research, essentially. Okay, wherein what you have done is you are looking at understanding how research can be done using sources or using information which has already been published in sources, various sources. And this could be, looking at newspapers, journals, looking at things like, magazines, or things which have been, things which basically provide you information about a particular topic or issue that you're, looking at. So secondary research is essentially called desk-based research. And in this case, what you have to do is, as an example or an extension to the activity to achieve distinction, you have to look at essentially an example of how to look at doing research. And in this example, you will have to essentially cover some of the best practices which are required to be, doing primary oblique secondary research. And that is where the handout which I sent you, just to give you an idea, this particular handout is directly related to your assignment. Okay. And my suggestion to you would be, this handout that I've given you is not in the form of a presentation, but the reason of this handout is that this handout very neatly summarizes, even if you don't study through a book or look at any other detail, for a detailed book for studying, to understand research or how research is done, this will actually clarify and clear a lot of your concepts in terms of why data is collected, how data is collected, what are the various data collection techniques, because that is essentially samples. So if I'm going to look at, let's look at relating this to an example of, say the tablets that you are aware of, say Argos and a lot of other retailers in the market actually sell these tablets nowadays, because it's one of the consumer devices which everybody wants to have rather than a PC or a laptop. Now, what they want to know is, when they look at doing a bit of research, is what are the best price points at which people are comfortable buying this tablet. What kind of features do they need? What kind of basic technical specification they need or they prefer? And then to a certain extent, who are their competitors? Now, if you have to answer these questions, you have to undertake some sort of a research study, or you have to do some sort of a study. How else you would find out that, say for example, Argos is a retailer. They don't have their own branded tablet, but they sell from, different branded tablets from Lenovo, Amazon, Samsung, LG, Apple, loads of others. And some of the other brands which they also sell are, some are price competitive, some are very high on configuration, and some are, quite high on price because of the features and the durability they provide. But in order for them to understand very clearly what are the buying preferences for consumers, they cannot find that out by doing research, which is data, or basically looking at information which can be collected from the internet, because that is already published. So what they need to do is they need to find out information directly from the source, which is consumers. So in those cases, they maybe, as a company, they might undertake a professional organization which would do, and basically which will go and do some field work on their behalf. Now, in the fieldwork, what they will do is they'll go and meet some consumers. They have a questionnaire, they have a survey, which will ask a lot of questions. And this data, when then compiled at the back, if they have 10 questions, which is things like, what is your name, your age, where do you live, what is your income level, do you own a PC, Mac, or a tablet, how many PCs or Mac tablet do you have, what kind of tablet, what are the activities you use the tablet for, how frequently do you use it, on average, how many hours a day, is it a shared device? Is it something that you own or you use specifically? So all these questions which are being asked to collect some specific data. Now, because if it is done face to face and the data is being collected directly from the consumer, it will be termed as primary data, because you are collecting it directly from the source. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So in this particular handout, what I've done is in very simple, minimalistic fashion, I have tried to look at explaining what is primary data, why is it collected, how is it collected, why is it called primary, and how that can be used to understand, address a problem or an issue. So similarly, what you have to do is go through this document, understand what is secondary data, secondary research, how secondary data is collected, what are the importance of secondary data, what are the sources from which secondary data can be collected, the advantages, disadvantages, and what kind of information can the secondary data provide. And that would help you understand, learning outcome 2. Okay, learning outcome 2 is theoretical. Now here, in order to look at understanding this theoretical, framework in terms of researching or collecting information to do primary, secondary research, the distinction task is asking you to quote an example. An example could be that the one that we have discussed in terms of tablets, what tablets to sell, what price points to sell, how many of them they sell. For this, each retailer then does research through an agency like Ipsos Mori, or they go to a lot of different agencies which are available, which do collection of data, both primary and secondary. Secondary is research data which is available from IDC, Gartner, Mintel, some of the big some of the big research companies where the whole organization is actually doing nothing but research. And they come out with industry trends, reports, and they look at studying that data to kind of understand the trends in terms of how the market is moving on the tablet side. And because that research is purely being done on the basis of published, facts and figures, i.e. secondary data, that is why that research will be called secondary research. Okay.
Right.
So this particular bit will help you cover your learning outcome, and it will give you clarity in terms of, why this research is done this way, and the 7 how, when, what, why, where is something which will be answered by this document, and it will cover your learning outcome too. Okay.
Right.
Now in learning outcome 3, yeah, but you have any questions? Go ahead.
No, I think makes sense.
Okay. Now in learning outcome 3, what we are trying to do is in this. This is related to research. Learning outcome 3 basically talks about, slightly related to what you've done in, say, the learning outcome 1. And here it talks about some of the things that we are going to look at in terms of, your skills. So in this case, what we are looking at is understanding and writing down some key bits of information which allow you to collect, what you call information, primarily, through the active sources, and in some cases through passive sources. So active source would be defined as something wherein you're looking at, you have a conversation with me, like we're having a webinar right now, you and me are having a conversation, and most of the data or the information that you're getting is you are getting it directly from the source. So here, the idea in learning outcome 3 is to understand a bit of communication, and how in communication you have 4 components. You have reading, write in English, you have 4 components: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So one of the components primarily, which is listening in particular, and reading and writing in the second aspect, are important, because these aspects of communication allow you to complete the cycle of, complete the cycle. When I say complete the cycle, what I mean is that here, if you look at the communication model, which is in the communication unit that we've studied, a bit of cross-referencing here, there are 3 steps to that process. So there is a originator, there is a message which is in the middle, and then there's a receiver. So somebody who's sending the message is being sent through a medium. Like if you're sending an email, it's going through the internet. If you are speaking over the phone, your phone, in terms of communication over the phone, is the medium. And then somebody on the other side who's picking up the call or receiving the call is basically using the phone to receive that information. And this same process can be carried forward into something called a 4-step thing, wherein if I talk, you receive me, and then you give me feedback or you talk back, then the whole cycle gets completed. So here, what we are looking at is that in learning outcome 3, what we want to be able to understand is, if you work within the office, sometimes you are in a position wherein you are going to be receiving information. You're going to be receiving data, and that receiving essentially would mean that you are going to capture that information using certain types of, formats. And here, what I meant by formats is, we are looking at sometimes, taking notes when you are in a class, when you're studying, you might be taking notes. You might be looking at, when I say taking notes is a generic term, but when I look at primarily, say, a boss dictating to a secretary or a personal assistant, he or she might actually use shorthand to take the minutes of the meeting. So when you see parliamentary reviews, have you watched the Parliamentary channel on BBC 504? Okay, so if you sometimes flick through the channels, go to 504, wherein it is normally broadcasting, it's a BBC Parliament channel. What you will see is sometimes you will see a lot of MPs sitting and doing the reviews, and doing select committees, essentially discussing with CEOs and a couple of others, and doing reviews on sectors. Here you will get to see somebody sitting in the middle of the discussion who is actually taking some notes. Because the speed at which the discussions happen, it is going to be very difficult for the person to be able to write, or take notes in full sentences. So sometimes you will see that people in the administration, or this kind of a position, which is steno or secretary position, they know a particular language which is called a shorthand. And this allows them to quickly take notes when somebody is dictating, and this then can be translated into fuller sentences as she would drop or he would draft up the full letter or the communication. So sometimes here, when we look at understanding how you receive information, it could be done in the form of taking notes. Now, notes is something that you could take notes on a piece of paper when you're in the class. It could be done using shorthand. You maybe sometimes use acronyms. So if I say a term again and again, like ATHE Level 3 Diploma in Business, so I could create an acronym for it and say, okay, ATHE Level 3 Diploma in Business. Because you use this word again and again, what you're trying to do is make it into some sort of an acronym or an abbreviation, and that allows you to kind of, capture the relevant output to it in a much quicker or a faster fashion. So sometimes people use shorthand, symbols, abbreviations to take notes. And that is what we need to be able to understand in learning outcome 3. Now, because we are talking about reading, writing, and listening skills, in this case, what you will also see is that we need to understand the context of something called body language. Because sometimes when you're sitting in a meeting or when you're in a gathering, what you tend to do is you tend to also get a lot of signals and indicators of how the person is behaving or sending communication to you, and that is something that you can judge or address from the body language of that person. Now, if you're in a room and you see somebody approaching you quite quickly, what it might do is create two kind of reactions. One, you will probably get afraid in terms of why is that person coming over to me, or the second would be you would proactively, mentally kind of prepare yourself to say, okay, if anything is to happen to this person, this is a step that I would take. So here, body language plays an important role, and what we're going to do is we are going to look at a small presentation which I will pull up, and that presentation will talk about the importance of non-verbal communication, and that non-verbal communication could be through the route of something called body language. Okay, there is something called 7 Habits of by Stephen Covey. There's a book which is a very popular book, and that book basically talks about the language of body language, essentially, or language of the gestures, and it talks about how this can altogether itself be treated as a language for people who have disability or people who have had or have become disabled over a point in time because of accidents or certain exceptions. But here the use of body language becomes very important. So that is what we need to understand. And last but not the least, sometimes what you do is when you look at say, for example, doing a particular task which has been given to you by your boss or your manager, then at some stage what the manager does is when you send the work over to him, he does a bit of proofreading or some sort of a bit of a reading to see if that work that you have done meets the criteria which he had specified. Now, that review as a process primarily talks about the ability to be able to look at picking out problems or picking out mistakes when you do the review. So here the last bit would be when we do speaking, listening, and reading. Sometimes you would see that if you are the creator of that particular of that context or that information, and you pass it to your superiors, they will be in a position to review that and provide you feedback to be able to make corrections before it is finally either disseminated or sent across as a as a notice, circular, whatever it is, as an example within the organization. So the learning outcome 3, if I just pull up a presentation right now, will be focused on understanding how you use your skills which are related to primarily speaking, listening, and writing. Okay. So here the idea would be to try and understand, like sometimes you say that, okay, I understand English quite well, I speak English quite well, or you say that, okay, I'm able to speak French, I speak an additional language like French, and that in French I am at beginner's level. Now, because you're at beginner's level, the idea here is to understand whether what skills you have, at what level you have, and then those skills, how they can be improved. So an example here would be when you get the opportunity to kind of say, can you take some meeting notes, or when you get the option to basically come in and say, okay, can you sit in the meeting and take some notes? Then in this case, what is happening is you're directly making use of learning outcome 3, in which you are talking about things that will help you to become, say for example, not become, but to be able to use some of these resources quite effectively to communicate your side of views. And this is something which can be done from a point of view of reading, listening, and writing. So in the case of reading, we will look at things which are going to be looking at giving you when I say reading, not literally reading, but it is going to be non-verbal communication, and you're looking at the use of body language. When it comes to writing, we are looking at the ability to be able to take notes, attend meetings, but take the minutes, and that could be done in the form of shorthand, which is a language, or it could be done in the form of abbreviations, and to a certain extent, it is also something that you can look at from a point of view of symbols or representation by pictures or charts or graphs. And then when it comes to looking at that, where are the areas of improvement? Here, some part of it is going to be related to your PDP, in which you already identified that these are the areas that I need to improve on, my handwriting maybe, or my ability to say, for example, understand body language, or my ability or my skills to be able to take notes, and that could be in the form of shorthand as a language that you might need to learn, because a lot of people who work within the administration and are involved as personal work as personal assistant or support side, when they chair, or sorry, not chair, when they attend meetings, the chair of the meeting normally will request them to take notes, and they can only be done because of the fast changing pace of the situation using something called shorthand. Okay, and at some stage, what we will do is the skills audit that you've done. The idea is, in this unit, you do the skills audit at the start of the unit, then you do it in the mid of the unit, through 3 or 4 weeks into the unit or the module, and then you do it towards the end of the unit after 6 or 8 weeks, which will show that how your how your skills have consistently improved, and this is something which will be seen in the skills audit trail. So the first one, for example, if you did ICT skills, or your speaking, listening, body language, networking skills, anything that you can look at in personal and professional side, people would have given you 4 types of rating: excellent, good, fair, or weak, or poor. So in this case, what you could do is, if some of the skills were rated as weak or poor, then how have those improved after 3 months, after 6 months, and that is something which is going to be captured across on the skills audit template. And in some cases, this review which is carried out is going to be carried out by your peers. That means your friends and family members who you are able to meet with on a daily, regular basis, and they should be able to kind of benchmark this to give you feedback on the skills audit. You tally that up and then reflect it onto a document. Is that okay?
Right. Yes. Makes sense.
Yep. Now, one of the key things, I'm going to be a little bit of talking on this in terms of the unit, is because this is more about doing. There is not much theoretical stuff to bring in, apart from 1 or 2 things which we'll cover just towards the end in terms of the presentation. But the idea would be to try and look at this unit, brings in some of the things that you've studied now in unit 1, 2, and 4. So communication skills, your marketing principles, and your the first unit that we did, business. So here in learning outcome 4, you have to look at a bit of small research that you have to do at your end. And here you have to choose a topic, and the topic that you picked in terms of a research has to cover some of the basic parts, which I'm going to just to show you. Give me 1 second. I'll try and show you a topic that I've sent to some students as a proposal. So in this bit, what you have to do is basically cover something which will be like a proposal. You have to draw a proposal that this is what you're going to study. But I'm just showing you something which is probably at level 7, not something at your level, but I will send you a toned down version of a proposal which will cover your learning outcome 4. So here in this outcome, what you have to do is, once you've understood primary and secondary research techniques and how and why research is done through primary route and secondary route, what you have to do is you have to create a research topic, choose a research topic, and then create a business proposal of how you will carry out that research. And that is your task 4.1 and 4.2. Okay. So here, as an example, just as an example, we discussed the research or an activity which Argos would do to try and find out what kind of tablets customers are buying, or what is the price point at which they are buying, and things like that. But here, what we are going to do is, so one of the topics that you will choose is going to be a problem area, right? Why do you want to do this research? Why do you want to do this study? So if you ask that question of, because of an issue or a problem that you consistently face or an answer that you consistently seek, you want to do a study to try and find out a way around it. And a simple would be that, say, for example, if you, a very simple literal example that I would give you is, if, for example, you're in Rochdale and you come to the city center to work every day, but you always get stuck in traffic. Whether you start at 7 o'clock in the morning or you are at 9 o'clock in the morning, you always are stuck in traffic for, say, 40-45 minutes. Now, because this is a persistent issue at your end, what you want to be able to do is you will start looking at an area of, maybe a bit of study to see what are the alternative travel routes I could take or means of transport that I could take to try and see the minimize this, delay because of the traffic that you get stuck in every day, or the time that you spend in traffic every day. So you would say, okay, I could try the train. I could look at the bus, public transport. I could probably drive through a different route, maybe slightly larger route, take the motorway, but then come into the city center. But the reason why you're looking at doing all this is you're trying to find a problem to a solution. So essentially, you have to come up with a problem, which is that problem will essentially give you the topic of how you will, or what will you research on, okay? And then what you're trying to do is write a few details about the introduction of why this is important. Why are you going to choose to do research in this particular area? And this is something that, you are going to be looking at by explaining your introduction. And then once you've given the introduction, what you'll then tend to do is basically come across of the research rationale in terms of why you want to do this research. And what is the outcome in terms of study that you will get when you do this piece of research or when you do this study, right? And that would give you your aim and objective. To the end, what you're trying to do is you're going to be picking up an appropriate technique. Let's put it this way, you're going to be putting up an appropriate technique, which is either going to be primary or secondary, and you will explain why you're doing a primary research, or you'll explain why secondary research is more optimum or, more suited for this particular problem. And then you'll put your references in. So this is an example of something called a research proposal, a 2-page proposal, but it talks about, the area of study, what are the reasons why you're looking at doing this study, what are the aims and objectives, and then you put your references down to say, okay, this is what the study would be, and I will study these topics or gather this information because it's going to be secondary, and what you list is you list them out in the references. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So I will send you a very, very brief, 1-page proposal, and to give you some idea in terms of how you will look at research topics. Okay. And the presentation, obviously that I've given you, you have that presentation with you, but this is a higher version of the presentation, not suited for you. So I'm going to send you some samples on that for you to be able to study. So I'll send you 1 or 2 proposals, and then what you have to do is draft your own proposal basis, the requirements for this, and that will cover your learning outcome 4.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, for learning outcome 5, what they are asking you to do is they are asking you to be able to produce some academic work. Now, to produce an academic work, what does academic work? You're producing an assignment, you're producing a presentation, which you're already doing for this unit.
Right.
Right? And that is going to be, say, in your case, if I have to look at accomplishing this task, what I have to do is when I look at some academic work, here what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and look at 2-3 things to present some work that I can do. So what I will ask you to do is here to produce a small presentation on a topic of your choice. I will ask you to produce a small newsletter, or a leaflet of your choice. And to a certain extent, what I'm going to do is ask you to talk about how will you present this when you look at presenting or sharing this work with your colleagues or your peers or obviously the tutor, right? And I'm going to show you a bit of an example here, which I have one of the students who has actually submitted something, and just looking at if that is relevant. So here, what he done is not this one, I think. No. So here, what I want to be able to do is give you an idea of a newsletter, give you an idea of So give you an idea of his own reflection in terms of skill. Now she is doing healthcare with us, but just give you an idea in terms of research. So as a student, you're not required to conduct a study, but basically understand the process of how the study would be done. And here the example has to be in terms of how would you carry out that research, right? So she has mentioned a few bits about a study on health and social care of UK. As a system, she wants to study and understand how does the health and social care system work in the UK. So this is a research topic she's taken. She's defined a bit of introduction. She's put the objectives down. She's explained how she will study by looking at the picture of NHS, mental health and public health care services. And that is what is detailed out primarily here. And then towards the end, what she's done is she's mentioned a few things or points which are related to the governance of how this is managed by the government in terms of legislation and things like that. So what she's done is she's effectively produced a small research project. I'll give you an example here. She's done some data analysis, some presentation, and it is something which covers learning outcome 4 and 5 in a quite bit of detail. And then when it comes to academic research, what she's done is she's presented this particular project itself as an evidence to cover academic research that she's done. Okay?
Right.
So this one, in terms of, producing her report, which is being done for Learning Outcome 4, when it is presented in a fashion that it looks like a research project that you've done or a study that you've done, is basically a presentation of academic work itself. Can you see? So she structured the report out in the initial bit. She said, okay, 5 parts to the report, and that has now been presented as an academic research or an academic report, which covers your learning outcome 5.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to send you a thing which is going to give you an idea in terms of how you have to create a research proposal. And once you've created that research proposal, how you're going to, take that further into creating a piece of a research project, which is like 200, 300, 400 words. So I would say 200 to 400 words, and that basically becomes a reflection of your learning outcome 5. Now, if you don't do that, what I could suggest you to do is produce a leaflet or a newsletter, and that itself would primarily be an example of a piece of academic work.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, and I'll show you very briefly an example of, say, a newsletter. In fact, I'll show you that in the same example, what she's done for leaflet. So this is where she's done a review, self-assessment in terms of a review essentially. So the first time you did your skills audit, but after that she's done a reflective review to say how your improvement has happened, how you've improved on your skills.
Right. Right.
I'm going to try and, so it can be done in any one format, but I'm just going to try and show an example of how she's produced a leaflet. You should have just marked the assignments. Yeah. So this is something which is an information that is produced, and this is nothing but a picture of the something what we call your piece of academic work. So I could do a newsletter, I could do a leaflet, which basically means that you have to do some research. You've created some kind of a story that, okay, you've looked at a couple of pictures, you've described those pictures, and because they've been presented quite nicely to depict a particular story, this is nothing but a professionally presented academic work, and that is an example of a leaflet.
Right.
Okay, and I'll give you an example of a newsletter as well, which just as an example, because these are these are things that at some stage you will be required to produce at your end, and that would show that you understand how work can be presented.
Right.
Okay, so that would basically show that how work can be presented in the form of various sorry, I'm just trying to pull out that how work can essentially be presented in the form of some sort of academic work. So leaflets, newsletters, emails, formal letters are all examples of academic work, because you've taken the pains and the time to be able to write something which is written in a format which is very structured. It has a start, it has a mid, it has a end. It reads like a story, but at the same point in time, it also conveys meaningful information to its reader. Right? A simple example is when a lot of manufacturers produce, say for example, when you buy a phone, for example, if you buy a Samsung Galaxy phone, right? What the manufacturer has done is it has taken the pains to write a user manual. Correct?
Yes. Correct.
And the reason why they have taken the pains to write the user manual is that they at some stage want you to understand when you open the phone and you have the user manual in your hand, what it will tell you step by step would be that this is what you need to do to be able to work with the phone or install the phone, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that bit, I'm just going to try. So I'm going to send you this. Don't worry about it. Just going to try and see if I have a sample of newsletter, which I've just sent across, or my colleague has sent across to, so I will send you a sample of a newsletter which I've had from students. Just give me 1 second. Let me just pull one out. I want to show it to you. Let me see if I have it. Definitely have it, because I've done a couple of newsletters. So it is presenting information in a structured, summarized manner, and that, because it is presented in that way, is basically conveying a meaningful set of information, and that is why it is called a newsletter. There
Right.
you go. So this is a small handout which was sent to you about what is a newsletter, but because this is produced by, say, somebody who's an editor or somebody who's a journalist, or when you're writing a particular thing yourself and you're trying to write it out as something which a person would pick up and read and then understand it fully, would be the format in which you write it, and this will be something like a newsletter. Like on our website, if you've been to UK University recently, what we do on our website is we ask people to subscribe to our newsletter. So when we send something out, it is information which has been written in a very concise manner, which conveys the important bits of information required for the person to and is relevant to the topic or the thing that they are interested in, and that is why it is called a newsletter. Okay, so I'll send you this handout, which will tell you in terms of how these to design. What are the things that you have to keep in mind before this is sent across. And this is then a section of an academic work that you produce. An assignment is also an academic work, right? A report that you write is an academic work. When you see the annual journal reports from large companies, when they publish their balance sheet and the report for the full year, that is an academic piece of research, because there's a lot of inputs which have gone into it lot of efforts which have gone into it, multiple set of departments, people have contributed, and that's how that report has been, produced. Right. So, and so annual, if I look at annual general report for Tesco. Now, this one, which has been produced in a very well formatted, well presented, accurate, summarized manner, is a piece of academic work, and this is what is called an academic piece of work, because it is it has been compiled after putting in a number of hours, efforts, and everything is summarized at the precise point, so that you are able to get the information which is required, because it is going to go across to shareholders, investors, the key people within the company, the board, directors, and they want to see a snapshot of how the company has performed over the year. And this gives them a picture of the performance of Tesco for throughout the last year. Can you see this?
Yeah, I can see it.
Now, this is a large piece of report. Now, we don't expect you to do this at your end at level 3, but the idea is you are picking up something which allows you to present something which is going to be structured, focused, summarizing key bits of important information, and that could be done in the form of a letter, a newsletter, a leaflet, an assignment, a presentation, and you could use any of the formats.
Right.
Okay. The reason why they've asked you to cover in this case is they want you to be able to pick up that technique wherein, so if you're asked at times to present information or submit information to an audience, then in this case, you should be able to produce something at a very professional level, at a level which is considered professional and easily understood by your intended audience. That is what learning outcome 5 is.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes sense.
So what I'm going to do today is basically, after kind of covering or summarizing the particular unit, what I want to be able to do is I'm going to send you a couple of templates today, because this unit is a combination of what we've studied across the other 3. Not so much marketing, but definitely a lot of communication, definitely a lot of business related stuff. And the idea is to summarize things here. One, to do your personal skills, your audits, your personal development plan, learn about how information is collected, analyzed, and presented, and that is nothing but research. Look at your areas in terms of how these information which you've collected, analyzed, can be presented academically or professionally as an output to an intended audience. And towards the end, you've been asked to kind of review your work and review what have you learned in terms of your skills, how your skills have been enhanced, and then basically produce a final version of your PDP, your skills audit, and your SWOT.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So this one will have a number of activities for you to do in the assignment brief, and the number of activities are asking you to kind of finalize individual small documents, which will essentially help you to cover up the task within this unit. Right. So, for example, if this is assignment, if you see, it talks about you should be able to complete the assignment through a course or a workbook. And here, what it says is you may wish to use a personal development plan template. So we have given you a PP template last time, and use that PD. What you're trying to do is you're trying to do a bit of SWOT. You're doing your skills audit. You're looking at your personal, professional skills, academic skills, and then you're also looking at your language skills. And then you try and set targets for improvement. You're using SMART targets. That means those are targets that you can be specific on. I want to improve so I know how to write emails. I want to write a business letter, or I want to write a business communication, which is professional and effective. And that could be a letter to the council saying I want exemption from council tax. It could be a letter to the council asking maybe, as an example, asking applying for your children to get admission in a school. And this is where you're learning that skill to be able to write professionally, academically, as a letter to a council for a specific problem or issue to be solved. And then there are extension activities, So note taking is an activity. You have to give an example of how you would do note taking. If you're given a situation wherein you're sitting in a class and you're taking lectures, like for example, in our case we are doing, but what you're doing is you are taking a bit of notes to understand what is being taught and delivered, and those being summarized in your own words, but in a very professional, laid out manner, which is going to be easy to understand, will be essentially nothing but the task which is called note taking. So I'm explaining a lot of things, but you will put it in your own words and then explain it and then cover it into some sort of headlines and paragraphs, and that will be giving a gist of what was discussed in this particular chapter. Okay. So, and the academic piece of research is something I think I'll send you an example of a proposal and 1 or 2 short proposals for level 3 which are suitable, so that you can develop an understanding in terms of how research or studies are done or investigations are done, which is to understand solutions or get solutions to problems which you face or issues which are resolved. And that is done when you identify, a research problem. Then you look at the aims and objectives, you do a bit of introduction to explain why you're studying this, how will you go about it, and then towards the end, what will you present, how will you present the data collected. That will be the task 3, and that will cover your merit and distinction tasks also. If you do it about 200 to 300 or 300 to 400 words, because you're going to be looking at everything in terms of detailed coverage by looking at introduction, a bit of review, understanding the research methodology, primary or secondary, which you're collecting data, and then presenting it in the form of analysis of tables or findings, and then towards the end do a conclusion or recommendation. And that would be itself an academic piece of work which you have produced, which is a research project. And that would do for your task, 4 as well. Okay. And the last is all about your review or reflective, summary of your PDP, of the personal skills, academic skills, and the English language skills that you've done, collated your things related to, learning outcome 1 using skills audits on PDP. And that is what you review at task 5.
Right.
Okay. So this is a bit of a hands-on unit. I think there is no set specific. I'm going to send you one presentation on body language as well for you to be able to understand. So a couple of small handouts that you will receive today, which will be related directly to some of the tasks of the unit. And that is what you have to neatly summarize in your own words. This unit is all about what you've understood, how you've understood, how you're going to do it, and how you're going to show improvement. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And if you do not understand, say, for example, you're stuck in terms of where to start, how to start, or what to do, then the best thing in that case would be to drop me quick emails. So what I will then do is basically send you some handouts and some, basic templates for you to be able to start to work on them. Because what it will happen in this particular unit would be that you will typically have what you call lots of different types of documents which you're producing, and all those will become the evidence, and they together combined will be your assignment. So it could be a presentation in this case, it could be PDP and SWOT that you do are individual reports, skills audit, and then the research project that you're doing is an independent project. The note taking or the leaflet production or presentation that you do is basically a reflection of academic skills and presenting them, professionally. So there are different types of documents that you have to produce in this unit. That's the essence of understanding academic and research skills.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
That is where I would probably end today. And what I'm going to do is send you a couple of things just after this, rather than, because I think last time I forgot, and I'm going to send it to you now before I get into a bit of a conference call at 4 o'clock. And they will have bits and pieces of everything in terms of as templates that you could use to cover some of the tasks related to this assignment.
Right.
Okay. Any questions, by the way, on email, phone, give me a call, not a problem, so that we are able to kind of comfortably, you should have comfortably everything with you before the 28th of this month. And then you have, we will also have a bit of an Easter break. It's not that we are not going to be working or, away, but in that time frame, you will have the time to be able to complete your assignments. And if you have any questions, queries, just keep, sending me emails. Don't worry about what you're asking or what you're not asking. Just send me an email and I will try and send you a template or, some sort of a format that you are able to understand, or a handout which will help you understand that topic much better to be able to close your assignments.
Right.
Is that okay? So that we will try and if you are able to finish it and complete everything by the 15th of this next month, April, then next month itself I will get your certification done.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So I will leave you for now and then hopefully catch up with you next week just to do a session on, if there are any generic discussions that we want to do on any topic or any task that you're currently attempting assignments on.
Right.
I've got a bit of marking to do on your formal marking to do on your assignment that you submitted. So I will try and complete and send that over to you also this week.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
Good stuff. So I will stop here for today.